Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. This is from a guy who's going to share his story of truly the marriage from hell. And I'm not exaggerating here in any way. And to add icing to the cake, the divorce from hell. And he's sharing this story, realizing there's not much he can do about his situation at this moment, but to help warn guys. To warn guys what can happen if you make the mistakes that he did. Okay? And there are definitely mistakes he's done wrong, but also just things that, unfortunately, how women behave and how our society is nowadays with regards to the divorce process and things like that. He doesn't want anybody else to go through this, so he's going to use what he went through just to help out. And I really appreciate he does this. So I'm going to go through a story here, and believe me, you guys are going to be, for you guys that are on the fence about getting married one day, this might make some of you say, oh, hell no. No, SSM, I'm not going to do it. And by the way, I know a lot of guys that watch this are married or thinking about it, regardless of what you may talk tough in the comments section. So this will help many people out. So jumping into it, he says, Hi, SSM. I got married because it's ingrained that we need to go to college, get a high-paying job, high-paying stress job, get married, and have kids. I'm short, skinny, and bald. These are obviously not highly attractive traits. I ended up marrying the first girl that seemed attracted to me. Big mistake. A lot of guys that don't think they have a whole lot of options because let's just say that they're short, like he said, bald, all these types of things. They'll pretty much take any ass they can get. And what happens when a guy or anybody takes the first thing they get without really screening and finding everything you can and blah, blah, blah? Doesn't put you in a very good position. What this guy should have done, even if he obviously is not the most in-demand guy because he said flat out here that he's short, he's bald and all that, and skinny, still took his time. So already, here in the beginning, you can see he's setting himself up to have a problem. I'm not saying this to be a jerk, but I'm making that point clear. You got to take your time and really get used to the gals and date and all that before you don't just take the first one that comes along. Oh, hell no. Because then she'll know. She'll know that you took the first one that came along. That's not going to make her have a whole lot of respect. He says, we eventually got engaged. At that point, she got mean. I wanted to see the best in her. I hope that she just had bridezilla issues. Spoiler alert, that's just her personality. So even though you weren't even married yet, she was already acting mean, but you still went along with the thing. Convinced yourself, oh, it's just her being a bridezilla or whatever. No, you don't marry someone that behaves like that. You certainly don't take the first gal that pays attention to you. And I know he knows this. I'm not saying this to be a jerk, but I'm saying this to all guys. And if she's, before you get married, acting mean and nasty, don't just say, oh, she's just nervous about getting married. No, that's her personality, as you're going to see in this guy's story. He says, she became very difficult and mean. It's important to note that she became very codependent with her mother. It's also important to note that it was too stressful to work during the engagement. If there weren't enough red flags, she's very high anxiety, and we don't dare challenge her comfort zones. She threatened to call off the wedding the night before. I went to bed that night worrying and not knowing whether I was getting married or not. Oh my God. I mean, just right there, that was a power play on her side, I might add. I'm threatening to call off the wedding the night before the wedding type of thing. Let's see how much this guy, what he does, how he responds. Is he going to freak out, beg me to stay? That shows she has all the power. And you don't want a woman to have the power in the relationship because that leads to disaster. He says the first few years of the marriage were okay. Okay. That's usually the one part of the marriage that usually is the best for people. But he said right here, we're okay. And I'd like to know the definition of okay. He says better than the engagement, but not great. She went on the pill, only to seldom have any SCX. She actually went off the pill to have kids. Upon getting pregnant, the SCX stopped. Good or bad, I got her pregnant quickly. She was very difficult during the pregnancy. I could give her a pass if she wasn't such a difficult person. At baseline, she kept a job for a little bit. Oh, imagine that. They got married and the SCX slowed down dramatically, amongst other things. Things were good for a few years, although almost zero SCX until she wanted to have another kid. That doesn't sound very good to me. And things being okay. if you're going to do relationships, you want to actually be with a girl that things are well beyond okay. They both have fun together, and she likes you and respects you and treats you well. These things can happen, guys, but sadly, they become more and more rare. Otherwise, why the hell are you with her, let alone marry her? But I know why, because the guy, unfortunately, had a low opinion of himself. This is why I do what I do, guys, to help guys build themselves up to be the best they can be, so they don't settle, like this story, and end up being miserable. We had 0 sex until she wanted to have another kid. This time she didn't get pregnant as fast and went into a panic. We almost had to go into the vitro route, which is expensive and there's no guarantee. I'm 99% certain that her high anxiety made her too stressed to get pregnant as fast. Oh, how wonderful. She has high anxiety as well. I'm sure that's such a treat for you to deal with. As luck would have it, my oldest son developed some behavioral issues. The second pregnancy had the same behavioral issues with her. Having 2 small children was very challenging, especially with behavioral issues. Eventually, my youngest either learned behavioral issues or developed it. What really started World War III, and he says not the literal one, that just started, was finding a killer deal on a nicer and bigger home. She and her mom objected since they picked out the previous home, but it was going to need at least $50,000 to fix the windows, roof, and update bathrooms. I promised her a car and money towards the kids' college fund because the money invested in the previous house was not going to get us anything, or to gain us anything. She and her mom hated that house, even though it was bigger and nicer. I made the executive decision. Guess what? I 100% honored my word. New and bigger car, as well as started their college fund. And by the way, guys, noticing this is the guy who's working. You're not hearing anything about her having a job. Things were okay for a few years. Back to that okay thing. Did you really get married just for things to be okay? But he said flat out, our society, in the beginning, the society conditions us. Got to go to college, got to work hard, got to do this, have a job you hate, get married, have kids. Guess what? Most people in society are miserable, so why go along and do everything that everybody else is doing? It's the people who tend to pave their own path, if you will, in life. They are usually the ones who are the happiest. Anyway, back to things being okay for a few years. Almost any time a kid cried, she went to bed with them. Suddenly, I hadn't slept with my wife in a few years. SCX was maybe quarterly. Knowing that divorce was imminent, I started working overnight from the 7 to 7 on-off schedule. My previous position involved a lot of hours that would restrict me to very expensive 24-hour daycares, none of which were near work or my house. Her mood deteriorated and she'd leave the house with the kids. She'd be gone for many hours. I had no idea where they were or for how long. Well, my friend, you most certainly should have known where your children were. And if she was your wife, you need to know as well. I would never tolerate that bullshit. And a lot of this shit she's talking about that's going on here is because, sadly, she knows you took the first girl that paid attention to him. She knows that you have unfortunately, through your actions, showed that you have a low opinion of yourself, so she could walk all over you. And obviously, I can tell you probably had some issues standing up for yourself. When men don't stand up for themselves, when they don't have a spine, when they don't check women, when they're pulling BS, they just pull more BS, lose more respect for you. I would call and text, but I would be ignored 99% of the time. What is her... See? You should know darn well where your kids are and your family are. Look how she's treating you. You pay attention not just what they say, but what they do. And her action shows she has no respect. I wait around for a bit and get into trouble when I went on for several-hour jogs or to the gym. She somehow forgot my birthday, Father's Day, or any other anniversary. Somehow I think I would have been called a horrible person if I forgot any of those. I like to think I provided her and the kids a good life, but nothing I ever did was good enough throughout the marriage. Does that sound familiar to some of you guys? No matter what you do, you can't make them happy. If you're working all the time and bringing in money, then they complain that you're never there to help out with the kids and the house and all that. If you're not working as much, then they complain there's not enough money there. Can't make them happy. The only times they're happy is generally when they have a guy they know they've had to fight to get, and a guy that will check them and lay down the law when they're pulling bullshit. But this guy hasn't done any of that. And I'm sorry this guy went through all this shit. I'm not trying to be harsh to this guy. I'm just trying to pick out the things that definitely he could have improved upon. And he knows now, obviously. But when you're younger, there aren't these things to teach you. I like to think that I provided her and the kids a good life, but nothing I ever did was good enough for her, blah, blah, blah. As a stay-at-home mom, she only cleaned the kids' stuff. Never really cooked for me. I did my own laundry out of habit. If you're working all the time, and providing for your family, and she doesn't have a job, you can bet your ass she should be cooking for you and going to the grocery store and doing laundry and vacuuming the carpet and taking the car in for servicing, whatever the hell it is, because you're the one working. We saw marriage counselors on and off, but this never got anywhere. Well, of course, because the marriage counselors, they want you to keep coming back, so they keep making money, and they almost always side with the woman. Eventually, I had enough and got a lawyer. Good for you. There's a point, guys, when you got to throw in the towel. And yes, guys know darn well in today's environment they're going to get hit hard in the divorce process, but we can always rebuild. Most guys do not need a whole lot to be happy, but they need their freedom. They need respect. If that means they're on their own, then they're on their own. But another thing is a lot of guys, they can't be alone. They're terrified of being alone. They are with somebody that treats them like shit than to be alone. That's another thing I try to do with this channel, guys. In addition to building yourself up, understanding that better be alone to be around miserable people that bring you down. Because you got a whole world of miserable people out there that just want to do that. Misery loves company. I'm glad you had the guts to get an attorney. I felt guilty and cried on the way home, but it was clear I was never going to be loved. There were a few glimpses of hope, but she eventually got very vicious. Back to my oldest son, she insisted on running the show with his health care, even though I'm a healthcare professional. It soon dawned on me that my son wasn't getting anywhere with his meds because she insisted on starting him from ground zero before the meds could be fully dialed in. She kept me in the dark until I realized I had no idea what meds he was taking. That is not cool. She should have been 100% communicating what's going on with your son and so forth, because you're the one working and she's the one with the kids. But you should have demanded that from day one, that you know exactly what kind of medication he's on, who he's seeing, what the deal is, all that. She kept me in the dark, blah, 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 until I realized I didn't know. This put me in a very dark place because his behavior got much worse because I let the wrong person take charge. Correct. You should have taken charge. But I get you were always gone and all that. Throughout the divorce, I received many threats of getting the kids taken away. I thought she was abrasive before the divorce. She was somehow less merciful and cuddly than Darth Vader. Again, I had plenty of dark thoughts about ending it all. The amount of times I threatened her and tried to demoralize her was exactly 0. Bro, I can imagine you felt like ending it all, but you know what? You did it. You didn't do that. You stayed. And you stayed strong for your kids and yourself. It's not worth throwing it away for some piece of garbage like her. You can always start over, even though you go through hell at times. I wish I was exaggerating. Due to the timing of the divorce, housing prices skyrocketed. I sold a nice house and would have made a decent profit, but it was obviously divided by 2. I went from a very nice 3,000 square foot upper middle class home to an 1,800 foot home in a neighborhood that wasn't nearly as nice. And he says, what? People still smoke and have vicious dogs? Awesome. Translation, he went to a neighborhood he wasn't exactly thrilled about. After it was all said and done, my state is generally pretty fair when it comes to custody. Despite all the threats, I got joint custody. I figure I lost about $500,000 in assets, bank accounts, and retirement. For the next 4 years, I owe her roughly half of my paycheck. Basically, I have 2 kids whenever I'm not working. Obviously, many men tend to be on the losing end of the custody battle. Thanks to COVID, my hospital gig is extremely high work volume and high stress. When that's done, I'm dealing with behavioral issues with 2 children. I'm thankful their school gives me some downtime. Summer is very draining. Long story short, I'm extremely exhausted. She gets to continue to stay at home and not work. She also gets a week off from the kids. So, half his paycheck is going to her, right? And this is the woman that's never worked and has been milking it for everything it's worth. Again, for you guys who are thinking about getting married, remember these things. He says, emotional distress aside, let's break this down. We were married about 10 years, dated for about 2. Smack. No. Guys, you should be with your girl dating for years. Years and years and years, and I don't mean to really get to know her and what she's all about, what she's like, what her family's like, all that type of stuff. Okay? Seeing what she's like in every situation that comes about, how she is with money, how her family is, blah, blah, blah. 2 years? Oh, they can put on the act for 2 years. They can put on the act for 10 years. But the longer you're with her, the more you can see. Combine that with you building yourself up so you don't just settle with the first girl who pays attention to you. This will help you out. But look what happened. He says here, she loved me about 10% of the time. Yeah, that's kind of pathetic. Dude, I don't think she ever loved you. I'm being harsh, but I'm being blunt. I don't think she ever loved you. She doesn't sound like she's capable of love. I worked my ass off in college. She stopped when it got difficult. I work a high-paying job. Working is too stressful for her. I provided. She got $500,000 and takes home my paycheck to stay at home and have the kids half the time. I basically work or have 2 kids with behavior issues. If we're looking at what I've gained versus what she's gained, marriage is a very risky venture. Yeah, marriage is a great deal for women. It is not a great deal for men. I gain nothing but suffering and financial hardship. I'm not bashing my kids, but because of them, I'm still under her thumb for 15 more years. 15 years. The best thing I would have been to relocate and be free of her. If I'm being honest, at the moment, I need to work my ass off to help my kids outgrow their behavioral issues. My gut tells me she might try to fight for more custody when the spousal support runs out, so Her Royal Highness doesn't have to get a job. She is a lazy lowlife, dude. I know it's hard. I know you're going through hell, but at least you're away from her in the sense that you're not under the same roof with her. Nothing can be done to save me at this point. I can only pass on what I've learned to unmarried men. First, getting married and having kids isn't a requirement. Side note, why work so hard at a job? Be better with money and find something easier. I spent way too much money when I was younger. Never marry a woman who is an income bracket lower than you, has anxiety, came from money, and has a high standard of living. Codependence with her mom, no coping skills, an attorney for her father, and never have kids if there are any doubts of her loyalty. All good pieces of advice. I married her because I was afraid of ending up alone. Guess what? I ended up alone anyway, with a lot less money and can't escape her. As lonely as I was, I would have walked away if I knew the suffering and financial loss was headed that way. If you want more info, let me know. Otherwise, make a fast video to caution men about the high risk and modest gains. So there you go, guys. Right then and there. It's unfortunately not a happy ending story, but it is a warning. It's like A Christmas Carol where Jacob Marley shows up in his ghost form to warn Ebenezer Scrooge and what happens if he doesn't change his ways. This is a warning to you guys. Now, does this mean they're all going to end up this way? Of course not. But this is a far along the lines of the worst case scenario. Now, there are things this guy definitely could have done to make the situation better, but it's in the past. But my big recommendation from the get-go is, even if, let's just say, you're short and you're bald and you're skinny or you're fat and you're not as physically appealing, there are some things you can't fix. You can't fix if you're short. You can't fix maybe if you go bald. I mean, it can be argued, Rogaine and all that, but a lot of dudes can pull off the bald look. If you're super skinny, well, you can join a gym and get some muscles. If you're overweight, you can join a gym and get on a good, healthy weight loss program and lose that body fat. But there will be women, if you build yourself up, that will like you. You got to do things to build yourself up. And that way you don't settle for the first girl comes along and gives you attention. Look what happened here, right? She was probably just waiting for some dude to settle down with. And there's also the importance of standing up for yourself and not taking any shit and checking the girl. But I can see how this dude was just worn down, and he was trying his best. So my advice here to this guy is, what's done is done. But you know what? Work on yourself. Now, I want you to maybe join a gym or an activity or something that gets you moving, something physical, whether it's a boxing gym or a martial arts school or going to cycling classes or I don't know what, or joining a cycling group, whatever. Something to get you moving, get some exercise, you'll feel better in a more resourceful state, eating better, eating healthy, and see what you can do with your career and move up. You're a healthcare professional, see what you can do to move up, make more money. And therefore then, even though half your check's going to her, at least you can then have more money coming your way to make things a little bit better. But find a way to obviously live cheap, be frugal, be smart with your money, and you can build things back. Unfortunately, what happened with her. I'm sorry it happened, but it fucking sucks, but it is what it is. And do your best with your kids to help them with the behavioral issues. I know it'll be a uphill battle given the fact that maybe she could be trying to screw them up more while you try to fix them, but they're your kids. Don't give up on them. They need you. But at this point, I hope that you learn not to rush in any relationships and don't try to find another person to love you and make the same mistakes you did before. But I thank you for sending your story. Your story will help someone. Guaranteed. This may not be a popular video because it's a little doom and gloom, but it will help some guys out there. And that's what we're all about. So, all right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Let this guy know what you think. Not giving him a hard time, but give this guy some piece of advice, some encouragement to help him move on this next stage of his life. If you've been divorced, guys, and you've been through hell, help him. Give him some advice that can help him out, because he'll read every comment, guaranteed. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.